So what we've seen is a shift away from kind of the high-end flagship phones. I think that most OEMs have basically accepted the fact that Samsung and Apple dominate this area. So the $600 price point for smartphones is no longer really interesting because a lot of the other manufacturers can't really compete in that area. So there's been a retreat away from kind of that $600 retail price point phone and trying to compete head-on with Samsung and Apple, and instead retreat to $300, $200, and even $100 price points for smartphones. Right now, what we're seeing is a lot of interest in, various price points from Chinese OEMs. So, for example, we're doing devices more and more often from brands like Coolpad, Xiaomi, Meizu, and Oppo. Now, a lot of these brands are not household names yet in the United States or in Europe, but they're emerging brands that have a great deal of popularity in their home country. And what's interesting about them is you might assume that these brands are all playing in the lowest cost spheres, but actually, with the four phones that we're looking at right now between Oppo, Meizu, Huawei, and Coolpad, actually Oppo has a $600 price point phone for the Chinese market, all the way down to one of the devices that we're looking at right now is a $130 retail price point. So what's interesting there is the Chinese OEMs actually have the entire gamut. We've got some at 3,500 RMB price point all the way down to about under 1,000 RMB. And 1,000 RMB price point is actually a price point that has a lot of interest for Chinese customers right now because there are quite a few phones, there's quite a bit of functionality you can fit in at that price point. So Samsung and Apple have such deep pockets that they have truly become not only the market leaders at the top end of the smartphone range, but they're really the only ones that have the budgets to innovate now, either through the acquisition of smaller companies that have new technologies or developing them on their own. But regardless, a lot of these other brands simply don't have those deep pockets or the vertical integration that Samsung has to supply themselves with their own components. So as a result, where Samsung and Apple get to innovate and focus on the latest and greatest features of tomorrow, a lot of these other manufacturers are forced to compete primarily on price versus features. So it comes down to their ability to design phones, and it also comes down to their ability to negotiate with the suppliers. You might be surprised actually in a lot of these phones to see Qualcomm, Samsung baseband, apps processors. And again, they run the gamut of using tier one, well-known manufacturers such as Qualcomm and Samsung, all the way down to the Chinese vendors that are up and coming like LeadCore, Spreadtrum, and of course MediaTek that has become very large.